Hello, here are my thoughts on John 10. In John 10, Jesus is talking to the religious people to explain who he is and what he has come to do. He uses figures of speech related to shepherds and sheep, as this would have been easy for people to understand, something from their everyday life. We'll look at each of these in turn and see what message Jesus is giving. We then see, in the later part of the chapter, that the response of people to Jesus is divided. Some people think he's raving mad, even demon-possessed, and others think that what he says is true and believe in him. So let's look at the context that Jesus uses. In the Holy Land, communities had sheep pens with high walls and one doorway. Several flocks of sheep would go into the sheep pen at night to keep them safe from wandering away, from thieves who might try to break in and steal them, and from wolves who might kill them. A watchman would guard the opening all night long. In the morning, the shepherds, note there is more than one, would come through the doorway to get their sheep. As the shepherds are calling out to their own sheep, the sheep hear the shepherd's voice and follow their own shepherd. Each shepherd leads his own particular flock out of the sheep pen and then onto the grassy pastures to graze. The first figure of speech that Jesus uses then is that of a shepherd going into the sheep pen by the entrance, not climbing in over the wall like people who would steal the sheep, and calling his sheep to follow him. He knows their names, and they recognise his voice and follow him. He is picking up on imagery from the Bible where leaders consider themselves to be shepherds of the people who are their sheep. However, this first illustration is not understood by some of the religious people. So Jesus then gives a second illustration. He describes himself as the gate or the door for the sheep. That sounds really strange to us, but it would have made perfect sense to his listeners. So out on the pastures there is a small sheep pen. The shepherd takes his place in the doorway or the entrance of the fenced area and functions as a door or a gate. You can safely go out and graze on the grass as a sheep because your shepherd is watching over you. Sheep can also go back into the fenced area where it is safe and secure if they are tired. The shepherd is still watching over them. He is the gate and provides safety. Jesus promises that anyone who enters the sheepfold through him, the shepherd, will be saved or kept safe. The sheep can have life and live it to the full with the shepherd watching over them. Jesus then returns to the first illustration of himself as the shepherd and expands on it, declaring that he is the good shepherd. Not just a good shepherd, but the good shepherd. So he explains that if someone is employed to look after the sheep, that person might run away from danger, for example if a wolf comes, because they would be more concerned for their own safety than that of the sheep, as a hired shepherd doesn't really care for the sheep. Jesus, by contrast, not only knows his sheep, but also voluntarily lays down his life for them. In other words, he wouldn't run away as he cares enough for the sheep to die for them. From these illustrations, Jesus shows his listeners just how deeply he, the shepherd, cares for people, the sheep. He loves them so much that he is willing to die for them. And not just for people in general, but for individuals. As it says in John 10 that he knows his sheep by name, just as God the Father knows him. Although the listeners would not have known this at the time, this willingness to lay down his life as the good shepherd points to Jesus' future death on the cross. Jesus also declares himself to be the only way, the gate, into the safe sheepfold. When Jesus says, anyone who enters through me will be saved, he is telling people that anyone who trusts in him will be saved or kept safe from being destroyed. If we know and trust the shepherd, then we can also know God the Father through him. In addition, being able to find pasture presents a picture of freedom and being satisfied. This reminds us of Psalm 23 in the Old Testament. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. The people who hear Jesus talk are divided in their response to him. Some think that he is completely barking mad, and others believe him and accept that what he says is true. It is the same for anyone reading what Jesus says about himself today. We can either reject his teaching or accept it and trust the Good Shepherd.